Nobody is coming. Let that land for a moment. Really let it land. Not as a motivational phrase. Not as a bumper sticker or a gym poster or something you screenshot and never look at again. Let it land the way it actually is, as the most liberating and most terrifying truth you will ever be asked to accept. Nobody is coming to save you, not your parents, not the government, not the perfect mentor who finally sees your potential, not the lucky break that rewards your patience, not the version of the universe that notices how hard you have been trying and decides you have suffered enough and hands you the life you deserve. No one is coming. And here is what makes this truth so devastating and so completely, utterly, permanently freeing at the same time. The moment you truly accept it, not intellectually, not as a concept, but in your bones, in your chest, in the place where your excuses used to live, and everything changes, everything. The way you see your morning, the way you see your obstacles, the way you see the version of yourself that you have been putting off becoming until conditions improve and the timing is right and someone finally gives you permission. David Goggins did not wait for permission. David Goggins did not wait for rescue. David Goggins was given a life that most people would look at and say, no one could be expected to overcome that. And he looked back at that life and said, watch me, what you are about to hear is not comfortable. It is not designed to make you feel good. It is designed to make you free. Stay with me. It is 1986, Taft, Indiana, a small town in the American Midwest that has the specific, suffocating quality of a place where people arrive and do not leave and over time stop, expecting anything different. A small boy lives in that town with his mother and his brother. His name is David Goggins. He is 4 years old, and the world he has been born into is already trying to break him. His father, David Goggins, owns a roller skating rink called Skateland. On the surface, it looks like a family business. Beneath the surface, it is a kingdom of terror. David is a violent man, a controlling man, a man who beats his wife and his children with a regularity and a brutality that leaves marks you cannot see on an X-ray. He forces his young sons to work at Skateland until the early hours of the morning, instead of sleeping. He takes their earnings. He humiliates them. He destroys in his children, deliberately and systematically, the belief that they have any worth beyond what they can produce for him. David watches his mother endure this. And somewhere in the body of a 4-year-old child, in the place where identity begins to form, a foundation is being laid that is cracked before it is ever built. At age 8, his mother escapes. She takes David and his brother and flees to Brazil, Indiana. They leave with almost nothing. They leave a man behind and find that what he built inside them came with them. The poverty, the fear, the sense of worthlessness that was not born in them but was planted there deliberately by someone who was supposed to protect them. David Goggins grows up poor in the specific, grinding, daily way that poor in rural America means. He wears the same clothes. He struggles in school. He is later diagnosed with a learning disability. He develops a stutter. He develops a condition, a stress response to trauma, that causes patches of his hair and skin to turn white. His body was literally displaying on the surface what was happening inside. By his own account, he was a young man with virtually no self-esteem, significant learning challenges, a traumatized nervous system, and a childhood that had done everything it could to convince him that the ceiling of his life was already in sight. And the ceiling looked very, very low. Fast forward to his early 20s. David Goggins is working as a pest exterminator, spraying cockroaches in restaurants late at night. 300 pounds, eating chocolate cake and drinking chocolate milkshakes, watching his life calcify around him into a shape he did not choose and does not want, but does not know how to escape. He has tried to enlist in the military before. He failed the entrance test. He gave up. He came back to the restaurants and the cockroaches and the weight and the slow, daily, suffocating feeling that this is it. That the boy his father told him he was nothing. That boy was right about himself all along. This is the darkness that does not make it into the inspirational highlight reel. The darkness that is not dramatic. Not a single catastrophic moment you can point to and say there, that is where it went wrong. It is the ordinary darkness. The accumulated darkness of 1,000 small surrenders. Of every morning you wake up and do not do the thing you know you should do. Of every night you go to sleep having been the smaller version of yourself once again. Most of us know this darkness, not necessarily in the extreme form that Goggins knows it, but we know the particular weight of a life that is moving in the wrong direction so gradually that you can almost pretend it is not moving at all. We know the slow erosion of self-respect that happens when you make promises to yourself and break them, when you know what you are capable of and choose, day after day, the version that requires less. We know the waiting for something to change from the outside, the waiting for the job to get better, the waiting for the relationship to improve, the waiting for the economy, the circumstances, the timing, the stars to align in a configuration that finally makes it possible to become who you have always said you could be. The waiting is the prison, and the lock is on the inside. One night, Goggins is sitting in his kitchen, 30 pounds overweight. By then he has lost some of the 300, watching television. And a documentary comes on about the United States Navy SEALs. About Hell Week, the most brutal military selection process in the world. 130 hours of continuous physical and psychological punishment designed specifically to break human beings down to their absolute core and see what is left. Most people watch that documentary and think, those men are extraordinary. They are built differently. They were born for this. I could never. David Goggins watched that documentary and felt something crack open in him. Not inspiration, not admiration. Something rawer and more dangerous than either of those things. He felt recognition. He felt the specific, vertiginous terror of looking at the hardest thing he had ever seen and understanding. Somewhere beneath the fear, beneath the self-doubt, beneath the 300 pounds and the exterminator uniform and the chocolate milkshakes, that this was the direction. This was the thing that would either kill the version of himself he had become or make room for the version he was supposed to be. There was one enormous problem. SEAL training had a weight requirement. He was over 100 pounds too heavy. He had less than 3 months to lose the weight. He had no athletic background. He had no support system. He had no coach and no plan and no reasonable basis for believing it was possible. He called the Navy recruiter. The recruiter told him it was not possible. He called again. He persisted until someone gave him the deadline. 3 months. He ran every day, multiple times a day, in boots because he could not afford running shoes. Until his shins fractured. Until he was running on stress fractures, because stopping was more painful, in the only way that mattered, than continuing. He lost over 100 pounds in under 3 months. He passed the weight requirement. He showed up to SEAL training. He failed. His first attempt at BUDS, the SEAL selection program, ended in medical withdrawal. Bacterial pneumonia. He came back. He failed again. He came back again. On his third attempt, he completed SEAL training. And he did not stop there. The man who at 21 was spraying cockroaches and eating himself into an early grave went on to complete Army Ranger School and Air Force Tactical Controller training, run over 60 ultramarathons, set a world record for pull-ups and completing 4x30 in 17 hours and become one of the most decorated endurance athletes in American history, not because someone saved him, because he finally accepted that no one was going to. The first lesson, the accountability. Mirror does not lie. Goggins describes a moment that changed everything. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror and looked at himself. Really looked. Not the quick, avoidant glance that most of us give our reflection on the way to somewhere else. He stood there and told himself every hard truth he had been running from. You are overweight. You are underachieving. You are using your past as an excuse. You are waiting for something to change that only you can change. You are lying to yourself about who you are, and you have been lying for a long time. He calls this the accountability mirror, and the practice is exactly what it sounds like, standing before yourself with nothing between you and the truth. No flattery, no excuses, no compassionate reframing of failure as something other than what it is. Most of us cannot do this. We are extraordinarily skilled at protecting ourselves from the truth of our own choices. We tell stories about our circumstances that place the cause of our stagnation firmly outside ourselves, and those stories are not entirely false. The circumstances are real. The damage is real, the disadvantage is real, but the stories become the cage, and the cage is comfortable enough that we stop testing the bar stand in front of the mirror. Tell yourself the truth. Every day. Without mercy. Not to punish yourself. Goggins is not about self-punishment. He is about self-knowledge. You cannot change what you refuse to see, and you cannot see clearly through a story designed to protect you from the discomfort of what is actually there. The second lesson, callous your mind the way you callous your hands. When you do physical labor with your hands, the skin tears and bleeds and heals and grows back harder. The callus is not damage. The callus is adaptation. The body's response to repeated stress is to become capable of handling more stress. Your mind works exactly the same way, but only if you subject it to the same process. Only if you voluntarily, deliberately, consistently place it under conditions it does not want to be under and refuse to let it find the exit. Goggins ran races on broken bones, not because he was numb to the pain, because he had trained his mind through thousands of repetitions of doing what he did not want to do, of continuing past the point where everything in him screamed stop, and to understand that the feeling of wanting to stop is not a signal that you should stop. It is information, and information can be evaluated and overridden. He developed what he calls the 40% rule. When your mind tells you that you are done, that you have given everything, that there is nothing left, you are actually at approximately 40% of your capacity. 60% is still available, untouched, waiting, behind the wall that your mind built to protect you from discomfort. The wall feels like your limit. It is not your limit. It is your comfort zone's last line of defense, and you only discover what is on the other side by going through it. Every single time, without exception, without negotiation. The third lesson, your darkness is your fuel, if you choose to use it that way. Goggins did not overcome his childhood trauma. He did not heal it in the therapeutic sense and move on as a lighter, freer version of himself. He weaponized it. He took the rage and the humiliation and the years of being told he was nothing, and he turned them into fuel for a furnace that burns hotter than anything a comfortable life could ever produce. This is not the message that most self-help content delivers. Most self-help content tells you to heal your wounds, release the past, find peace, and operate from a place of wholeness. That is a valid path, but it is not the only path. And for some people, for the people who have been through the specific kind of darkness that Goggins has been through, wholeness is not the goal. Excellence is. There is a version of your pain that destroys you. We have all seen that version. We have maybe lived that version. It is the version that turns inward and becomes addiction, isolation, bitterness, the slow collapse of a life that never got the chance to be what it should have been. And there is another version, the version that you turn outward, the version that you look at and say, everything that was done to me, everything that tried to break me, every voice that told me I was not enough, I am going to use all of it. I am going to turn all of it into momentum, and I am going to build something with this life that makes everyone who counted me out a witness to what they underestimated. Choose the second version, every morning, as a deliberate act, as a discipline, as the decision that separates the people who are destroyed by their past from the people who are defined by what they do in response to it. The fourth lesson, staying hard is not a feeling. It is a decision. There is a common misunderstanding about people like Goggins. The misunderstanding is that they are always motivated, that they wake up every morning burning to run 50 miles and do thousands of pull-ups and push themselves to the absolute edge of human capability, that the discipline comes from a feeling, wavian, internal fire that never goes out. Goggins has said explicitly and repeatedly that this is not true. He does not always want to do it. There are mornings, cold, dark, early mornings, when every part of him wants to stay in the bed, when the body is tired and the mind is offering every reasonable justification for a rest day, for a slower pace, for a version of the plan that demands a little less. He does it anyway, not because he feels like it, because he decided, because the decision was made before the feeling arrived, because he understands that if you wait until you feel like doing the hard thing, you will be waiting for the rest of your life. Motivation is a visitor. It arrives without warning, stays as long as it likes, and leaves without notice. You cannot build a life on a visitor. You build a life on a decision, on a commitment made in the clear light of day that holds when the darkness arrives and the feeling disappears and everything. in you is looking for the exit. Decide before you feel. Act before you are ready. Do the thing before the motivation arrives. This is what staying hard means. Not a feeling. A decision, made every single day, regardless of conditions. I want to tell you about a run. In 2006, David Goggins entered the San Diego one-day ultramarathon, 100 miles, in 24 hours. He had never run more than a few miles at a time in his preparation. He had not done the training that a race of this magnitude demands. He did it anyway. At mile 70, both of his feet were broken. Not sore, broken. The repeated impact of 70 miles on unprepared feet had caused stress fractures in multiple bones. He had lost control of his bladder and bowel functions from the exertion. He was bleeding. His kidneys were beginning to fail. He had 30 miles left. He finished. Not because it was smart, not because it was safe, not because anyone was watching or because the prize was worth the physical cost. He finished because David Goggins had made a decision, somewhere in the ruins of his childhood, somewhere in the cockroach-spraying, chocolate milkshake darkness of his early 20s, somewhere in the cracked kitchen watching a documentary about men who refused to quit. He had made a decision that the version of him that stopped was not a version he was willing to be, and I want you to think right now, in this moment, about the 30 miles you have left, not in a race, in your life, the chapter you have not finished, the business you have not launched, the relationship you have not repaired or released, the body you have not built, the version of yourself that you have been circling for years without committing to. You are not done. You are not at the finish line. You are at the point in the race where everything hurts and the excuses are entirely reasonable, and no one would blame you for stopping. This is exactly where you are supposed to be. This is not the sign that you chose the wrong path. This is the sign that you are on the right one. Because the right path, the one that leads to the version of you that you actually want to become, always runs directly through the place where you most want to stop. No one is coming to carry you through it, but you can carry yourself. You always could. Here's what I want you to do. Not when you feel ready. Not after you have had time to prepare now. Stand in front of a mirror today. Not for 2 seconds. For long enough to tell yourself the truth, the real truth, about the choices you have been making and the excuses you have been accepting and the version of yourself you have been settling for. Do not perform the truth. Do not frame it kindly. Just see it clearly, without the story you usually tell between yourself and the mirror. Then write down the one thing. You know what it is. The one thing that you have been avoiding because it is hard. The one thing that the smaller version of you has been successfully arguing against for months or years or decades. The one thing that, if you did it consistently for the next 6 months, would fundamentally change the trajectory of your life. Just one thing. And tomorrow morning, not someday, tomorrow morning, do that thing. Before you check your phone. Before you wait for the motivation to arrive. Before you have had the chance to talk yourself out of it with the same arguments that have been working on you for too long. Do it when you do not want to, especially when you do not want to. Because the gap between who you are and who you are capable of being lives exactly there, in the distance between not wanting to and doing it anyway. Goggins was a traumatized, overweight, learning disabled, stuttering young man spraying cockroaches for a living. And he became one of the most extraordinary human beings who has ever lived. Not because the universe intervened. Not because someone saw his potential and pulled him up. Because he looked at the life he had been given and decided, with the specific, ferocious, non-negotiable clarity of a man who has nothing left to lose, that he was going to be the one who changed it. You have that same decision available to you. Right now. In the life you are actually living. Not after the weight is lost. Not after the debt is paid. Not after the kids are grown or the job changes or the circumstances shift into a configuration that finally makes it possible. Now. No one is coming to save you. You do not need saving. You need deciding. Decide. Stay hard. Go. If this reached the place where your excuses live, share it. Not to inspire someone else. To hold yourself accountable. Subscribe for more truths that do not comfort you. They change you. And tell me in the comments, what is the one thing you have been avoiding that you are committing to starting tomorrow?